Well, I didn't. I watched Godzilla King of the Monsters. I mean, I watched the Monsterverse version of that movie. I did watch the original one, and that was a while ago. Pretty good. Anyways, I don't want to waste your time reiterating too many of the opinions you've already heard if you've looked into this movie at all. Lots of people have said the visuals are great, Watanabe delivers a poignant performance, and McCreary's music is epic. Plenty have rightfully criticized the lack of a consistent or meaningful tone, the odd pacing, and the superfluously comedic side characters. I've enjoyed Bradley Whitford and Thomas Middleditch in things before, but their purpose here is ultimately detracting. For example, there's a scene where they finally name Ghidorah, and it's used to make an STI joke. But, like I said, most of this has been stated. I want to rather focus on something that I'm sure has been said by plenty of people, but I myself have not seen. As I've mentioned before, what makes the Toho Godzilla movies so worthwhile is their social messages. Mothra vs. Godzilla is about environmental racism. Giant Monsters All-Out Attack is about the guilt of denying the atrocities committed by your nation's military. Tokyo SOS is about respecting people's remains. And of course, pervasive throughout the whole franchise is the message that the use of nuclear materials for attack or for testing is dangerous and fatal. Even a bad Honda Godzilla movie manages to have interesting points, and the same goes for most of Toho's movies following Honda's departure from the franchise. Not Final Wars, though. But King of the Monsters doesn't have interesting points. Well, maybe it does, but not interesting in a way that I think benefits either the film or the audience. So, Toho Godzilla, whom I'll refer to as Gojira so there's less confusion, even when they're the hero, is a force of destruction, and a warning that messing with nuclear weapons only leads to death. Monsterverse Godzilla is definitely a much more heroic figure than the average Gojira, but he's in no way harmless. People die because of his movements, even if he's more concerned with unintentional casualties than you'd expect an animal to be. Still, the problem isn't that Godzilla is a friend to humanity. That's nothing new. The problem is Godzilla is not environmentally dangerous. Both Honda's and Legendary's Godzillas have vaguely similar origins. A prehistoric apex predator, awakened or empowered by radiation, resurfaces and explores metropolitan areas, leading to large amounts of property damage and, of course, much more seriously, loss of human life. However, the primary difference is that Gojira is a destructive force toxic to nature. Legendary Godzilla and nuclear explosions in general in this story are a boost to nature, incomprehensibly. Consider San Francisco. We're shown in King of the Monsters that the radioactive damage caused by the nuclear explosion and radiation of the Mutos in 2014 actually led to a bloom in plant life, causing nature to take over in a healthy, harmless way. Or consider Godzilla himself. A nuclear warhead exploding in his face gives Godzilla superpowers, and it doesn't anger him. And lastly, the end credits, which say the radioactive monsters fixed the coral reef, reforested deforested regions of the Amazon, made the Sahara a rainforest, stopped climate change, and repopulated endangered species. The nuclear radiation is good for life concept likely comes from a misunderstanding of the resulting ecological status following the fallout of the Chernobyl disaster. The lack of humans in the area has led to an amount of mammal life similar to that you would see in a nature preserve. More wolves and pigs and bears understandably looks like a healthy improvement to lots of people, but while there are more mammals, insect life and arachnid life is greatly reduced, and an ecosystem needs more than just the fluffy cute animals to be healthy. Also, closer to the epicenter of the disaster, there are lowered populations of all animals. Those animals that are there are also frequently mutating at an unhealthy rate. But it's not the fact that they don't understand the science of radiation that bothers me with this movie. What concerns me is that the show portrays the United States military stockpiling and use of nuclear weapons as something good, something we should be thankful for, because in-universe, had it not been for the US having nukes, the world may have been destroyed. Nukes, though destructive, saved the world. Be happy there's such a thing as a nuclear bomb. There are few remakes that you could truly call diametrically opposed to their inspiration. Sure, they change things around, but to not only refute the thesis, but assert the exact opposite point of what the original was saying, is gall unrivaled. Gojira was about the evil of the atomic bomb, plain and simple. Atomic weapons testing awakened a beast. That beast killed countless innocents. King of the Monsters says, actually, using nukes is good and saves the world. The idea that the nuclear bombing of Nagasaki and Hiroshima was ethical is not a new one. It's taught in U.S. textbooks, it's touted by U.S. leaders, it's ingrained in U.S. consciousness. I, like everybody else that has debated the subject, cannot gaze into the alternate histories that exist according to the theory of the multiverse to see if Soviet pressure or blockade tactics or anything else could have ended the war with less casualties. I am not defending the evil carried out by the government and military of Imperial Japan, and I am not saying the Allies in World War II were not justified in their military action against military targets. All I can say is the cost of over 200,000 innocent civilian lives is not a justified moral action, but an act of terror. King of the Monsters does not explicitly say the bombings of Nagasaki and Hiroshima were justified, thankfully, but it does say that the United States military is right to possess nuclear weapons and is right to intervene in foreign nations without consent. You might say, well, of course they use nukes and invade Mexico and neutral Antarctic territory. They're stopping monsters. And yes, I recognize in-universe it's hard to argue that they aren't saving lives. But the contrast is clear. Gojira says atomic weapons are dangerous, whether used intentionally to harm or not. King of the Monsters says atomic weapons can be necessary. This film rejects the premise and the pain of the original, and instead supposes a world where nukes save lives. Was it an intentional choice to minimize the pain caused by nuclear weapons and nuclear weapons testing? The first movie in the MonsterVerse series suggested that the testing in Bikini Atoll was justified attacks against Godzilla. This movie names the human hero's home base after the first such test. I believe it is intentional. After all, need to get that Department of Defense funding somehow. I like cheesy kaiju movies where it's a big lizard fighting a big pteranodon. I enjoy goofy suit performances and anthropomorphized dinosaurs. Are Honda's sequels as poignant as Gojira? No. But they still carry the message that nuclear weapons are immoral and dangerous. King of the Monsters spits in the face of that message and promotes its own. The United States military is justified to refuse to ratify the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, and it's good to use nukes, because sometimes it's necessary. The movie being slow or wacky or cringeworthy doesn't ultimately matter to me. There are plenty of movies that do that are inoffensive. But to disrespect the pain expressed in the original is unfathomably callous. I do want to stress, though, as I've seen recently a going trend of people saying that if you don't like something, keep it to yourself, or else you're advocating censorship. I'm not advocating that King of the Monsters be censored, blocked, or even removed from shelves. While I'm glad I didn't pay money to see it, and wouldn't recommend anyone else do so either, I do think the film has its worth. Primarily, the film serves to showcase a viewpoint of those that either missed or disagreed with the original's message. It has worth if seen as a response to the original, and as an example of a lack of understanding and empathy.